Welcome back. We're still on our discussion with our esteemed colleague and friend David Harrington, who is walking us through the trajectory of pragmatism, how to take the stuff in this book that many of you have read almost ad nauseum. How do you take this stuff? How do you practice it? And one of the most important areas that we're about to talk about right now is managing, leading, and directing teams. So, David, this topic we've got here, it's the importance of managing and leading project teams. And under this, I've got two sub-bullets here, dealing with people and communications and facilitation skills. So let's break down the umbrella of the importance of managing and leading project teams. So we've got two facets here, and I mean, this is stuff you crafted as well. So we've got managing and leading. Can you break these down and give people an idea of both?
Well, in terms of managing, if you're managing your team and you're also managing a project, there's some similarities. But let's talk about managing people. I think that when you manage people, you have to have a degree of consistency, but at the same level, you know, you're treating people somewhat the same. And I say somewhat. And I know that seems a little bit odd, but at the same time, when you really work with coaching and developing people, everybody has different strengths and different developments. And so working where somebody's strengths are, you know, and actually finding out how to leverage, because so often it is finding the right people with the right skills and put them in the right position to be successful and to grow. And so at one level, you're looking at that individual and saying, now that I have a chance to work with this person, how can I develop them, but how can I leverage their strengths to be successful? And I think success is important because it breeds future confidence. And when you don't succeed, you learn. So it's a combination of success, a lot of success with some, so I don't only use the word failures, but missed calls, because you learn, as long as you're bringing both those in, it helps you grow in both levels. The other thing that people don't always realize, which is the same about organizations, is that sometimes your strengths in the right situation, especially if they're strong strengths, are also development needs in the wrong situation. You see that with CEOs that are really good at cost cutting, but not very good at, for building up new sales. Individuals that, I have a PM right now that is very detailed, can tell you everything, but at the same time, sometimes he gets bogged down in his communications, because he has to give you every detail and loses his audience. But boy, if you ask him a question and a customer or a client has, or business line of business has a question about some aspect, he knows that he's on top of it, but it also at times can be a detriment. So you're working with, how do you, as you manage this team, you're one level, you're consistent, but then you're utilizing your team differently. And then you want to put people in a situation where you're giving them growth potential. Like, for instance, maybe I have a real strong technology manager, but I'm a big proponent of also managing process. So maybe I might give them a project that has more process than technology. It's a little bit out of their comfort zone, and I'll work through there. So, you know, when you manage, you're always, the biggest, I think, responsibility for managers is to hire good people and then coach and develop them. To me, that's the most important, because guess what? At the end of the day, if you have a number of projects that you're managing as your team, you're not doing that you're not be able to be everywhere.
That's true.
It's going to be how good a team you have, how you develop that team, how you coach that team.
Absolutely.
And then also you give them credit and visibility, because you want them at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, I want my project managers to own their projects. It's their own sand and gravel. You know, they own it. Their name's stamped on it. So that's kind of in the managing part.
Right.
And the leadership, I think leadership comes in professional discipline, where you are on top of your craft and take it seriously. Whatever that, you know, in project management, that example, but you could be operations, you could be a Six Sigma person, you could be, you know, whatever discipline, it doesn't matter. You're on top of your craft. At the same time, you don't take yourself quite so seriously. You have the right kind of openness to accept different ideas, and you know, I think leadership also comes in terms of being able to lead, when you need to, but in a collaborative fashion.
Gotcha.
And collaboration is an interesting piece. In this day and age, I find that more and more things we have to get things done with collaboration. However, we still have to get things done. So it's not always a consent, it's not always a democracy, but how you work that, how you get inputs. You know, Covey says it best early on, seek to understand before you're going to be understood.
Right.
So it's one of the first steps I talk to my PMs. Seek to understand. If you want people to listen to you, you need to understand where people are coming from.
Absolutely.
Whether it's your customer, whether it's other people on your team, whether it's other disciplines that are working on your project team, you need to understand them personally, and you understand, you know, their strengths and any liabilities, and seek to understand their needs. Because if you're not willing to listen and understand their needs, why are they going to listen to what you need to have done, other than just the power of having the title of being the project manager, and that only goes so far.
That's true, absolutely. Which underscores the first bullet we've got, dealing with people, nuggets on dealing with people as a project manager.
One of the things I already talked about, Phil, was you seek to understand. I also think that dealing with, when you have an issue with trying to hold accountability, you need to be very focused. It's very difficult sometimes when you bring up an issue. If I'm having a conversation with you about some, let's say, some issues with your project that I think, you know, we need to try to resolve, it's very easy for you to try, for people to try to deflect that conversation. So a lot of times you're going to have to recycle that conversation back and stay on point. Now, you may bring up something that has relevancy towards something else, and I may have to say, Phil, that's a good point. I'll come back and address that other issue right now. You know, you may bring up, you know, you haven't approved my vacation time, or whatever it may be. It may be legitimate, but it has nothing to do with the conversation that we're having. So you have to be patient. And I think the other thing for managers when you're working with your people is that when you look at the amount of time that you're spending one-on-one, if you're talking more than they're talking, then you're not getting engagement. You're not getting their ideas. It's a short-term solution to say, here's what I need you to do, 1, 2, 3, go do it. That's a short-term play.
Yeah.
You know, you want to hire people that want to grow, want to learn, and they want to own their craft, own their projects. You got to leave them. I kind of like, I guess the approach that I take is I try to develop a sandbox that they can play in. And I may put some boundaries around where they need to kind of stay within, but it's pretty broad. Within that, they need to, you know, come up with their game plan. And I don't know how many times I've said this to my team, and I have examples in my career where I think the solution that they have may be B or C. But at the end of the day, it's more important that they own it as long as it's within that parameter. Because how do I know that my solution 1 is going to be better than their solution 2? And at the end of the day, they have to feel like they've owned it and they're running it. Now, I'll coach, but I try really hard, as long as it's within those parameters, that they make decisions.
Absolutely. Communications and facilitation skills go smack dab with what you just spoken about. So, tips, tricks, nuggets, top of the ways, based on your, you know, speaking of your experience, one of the things I found really unique and quite interesting is the fact that you are one of my only students to have an SPHR, which is a grueling exam, and to go for seconds with a PMP on top of that. So tell me a little bit about your SPHR exam experience, practicalities of the thing, and what geared you to go for the SPHR in the first place?
Well, I was in the HR field when I went after that certification, and back to my, I don't care what discipline you're in, again, back to my point that you need to really take your craft seriously. And so whether it's PMP, whether it's Six Sigma certification, whether it's HR, you need to take your craft seriously. It's one way of validating your craft, and also, and those are not easy exams. So I think, you know, it's fundamental to my belief that, you know, you constantly are learning, you're constantly growing. And some of that's going to be certification, some of it's just going to be experiences, whether it be classroom, whether it be mentoring, whether it be just experience. You're constantly learning. You're either growing or you're not. You know, and there's, you know, you need to, I think in this day and age, to get on the train. Now, it may take you in a different path,
Yeah.
and you may say, hey, I've been in this arena and I want to try this arena over here. That's fine. Maybe I want to become a Scrum Master and be an Agile. You know, there's things that you can move not only in PMP from a project manager, but you can move in other areas.
That's true.
That you may want to do.
That's true.
It's just follow your passion, but be good at what you do and continually work your craft.
Absolutely. And, you know, I dare say, to throw in the other one, so you got the Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, you got the SPHR, but one thing that weaves a lot of these certifications you've got together is the communication and facilitation skills. So, top of the wave, nuggets.
For facilitation, I think it comes down to, first of all, good planning. And even if something simple in a meeting, understand your audience, understand what they're looking for. Maybe you might do some preliminary work before you have your meeting with certain individuals. I think good planning up front. Be very clear about why you're meeting. What are we meeting? Who needs to be in? In this day and age, with people being decentralized, and you have whether video conferencing or conference calls, it's very easy to call a meeting and have a number of people on that call.
Yeah.
But the question is, should all those people be on that call? I'm not trying to limit it, but think, plan ahead of time. Who needs to be there? If you need to reach out to explain ahead of time, you think somebody is really busy and why it's important that they're there, you do that. And also for people that maybe shouldn't be there. There was one business group, which I won't name, way back when, we put a great project in place, did all the fundamentals, seemed like it was going to work, and the changes, and we found out, wow, we're not seeing the lift on the metrics. And we finally went out with both my project manager and with a Six Sigma person, because they were part of this project, and we started looking around, and we noticed that 85% of the first line managers were tied up with meetings all week long.
Wow.
So how would you expect, because we had some fairly significant changes in the process for improvement on this line of business, how would you expect that to be communicated and understood, even for questions, if your first line managers were not on the floor? Had nothing to do directly with the project, but clearly it was an observation that we saw that said that's got to change. And once we made the change, and one of the reasons that led up to that reason is that when they called meetings, they expected every first line manager to be there, and that wasn't practical for as many meetings. They finally had to say, well, and the first comment was, well, if we don't let Sally come, then she's going to be upset. And the issue is that gets back to leadership. You know, make a decision who's going to carry the torch, give that person a chance to attend, rotate it around, but tell people their primary responsibility was to be out on the floor with their people, and that certain meetings would be rotated around. And once we did that with that business, that project that we put changes in place, the metrics really started to go in the right direction. So there's an example of leadership. There's an example of thinking about your audience and then it having to tie into a project. The other thing about facilitation is that how do you engagement. So often, if people aren't saying anything, or only a few people say anything, what about the other people in the room or on the call? Could they ever? How come they're not saying anything? Do you call on them? There's a number of different ways, but you need to get engagement. You need to have a good meeting. You need to have a good plan when you have the meeting. One of the first things I talk about, whether it's a call or a facilitation, why are we having the meeting? What do we want to, even if it's only an hour meeting, what's the outcomes? And at the end of the last 5 minutes, did we accomplish those outcomes? It's, pretty simple, but it's amazing how many businesses don't do that. And I think that is a start in the right direction. But also calling on people that, Phil, what do you think about this? Call them by name. Or, you have another piece where, the individuals maybe have a lot to say, but they're a little quieter, but they have a lot to bring. Maybe I say, Phil, in this next meeting, I'd like to have you during this meeting present something on this particular area. So you're going to be asked to give 10 minutes on this area because you're an expert, and we've already talked about it. So now I've already got you comfortable with that engagement. There's so many different ways, and we talk about how to handle people that are negative or doubters. It's okay to have some negativity as long as it's not, they're open for change. And sometimes you have to work through with trying to hold that, okay, great comment, Phil, but I'd like to see what Sally has to say over here. And occasionally, if somebody's really not participating, then it's probably a one-on-one conversation that you need to have, and those happen, but they don't happen as often as you think. Most people usually will work toward it. It's usually getting a balance of, and coming back to what we're here for, you know, and also focus. Because it's how many meetings have you been in, Phil, where the meeting gets derailed?
Oh, yeah, too many.
Too many. Or you go over the time slot. And so those things project managers should be skilled at.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that project managers bring to the party is good facilitation, good time management, but you have to make sure that you're on top of that craft. And I would encourage everybody listening to this that even though the PMI and the PMBOK do a good job, I think there's enough work in the whole facilitation work and how to carry on crucial conversations that you should take additional training in these areas, because more and more it's how well you communicate, how well you facilitate, how well you manage change.
Absolutely. Huge nuggets, great points. In closing, project manager comes into an organization and immediately has a dwarfed sense of appearance, dwarfed sense of importance. How would you mentor and encourage a PM coming into a firm and being a little bit of the shy, introverted type of PM who sees senior management as they're up there, I'm down here? How would you give some words of encouragement or changing the mindset of those individuals? Just a few words for those kind of people.
Well, first of all, I would start with a conversation about, define for me what role a project manager plays in a project or can play. Take it just out of the situation, because a lot of times they'll get tied into an individual that's really maybe overbearing or strong-willed and a leader, and they'll focus on that. And I'll take that out of the equation. I'll just say, why have a project manager? And first of all, we got to be grounded, because if they start with an answer, well, I need to just be more administrative, like I need to track tasks. I need to make sure that we have dollars in the budget that we can spend. And I'll agree that it's part of it. But if they don't see the bigger picture about what a PM project manager, we have to start there. Because if they don't have a clear understanding and we don't see on the same eye, they're not going to get to that vision.
Right.
Once we get to that vision that they see there is value, then we start talking about how do you create this value. And, you know, and then that's where you have to work with them about doing that. And at first it's clearly coaching. It's clearly maybe adding somebody else they can talk to. But at some point, it's kind of like a kid that you're doing swimming lessons. You may take them to the side of the pool. You may help them with this, and they've already gotten some instruction. But at some point, if they don't want to jump in the pool, and they've had all the instruction, and you have somebody there to help them, they're not going to drown or go under, but you're still going to have to push them into the pool. And they're going to have to sink or swim. Now, I mean, and I'm saying this, there has to be safety.
Yes.
But the point still is, at some point, I am going to say to that project manager, look, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You want to earn respect, then you're going to have to provide value. By providing value, it goes back to my talk about all the things that a project manager has to do. So I take them through that discussion, but at some point, I do kind of give them that nudge and see if they're going to sink nuts without support.
Yeah.
But they have to do that.
Yeah.
And it's something that's earned. Too often, I think people, it's not just project managers, it could be any title.
Right.
Feel because of the title
Yeah.
that gives them the authority.
True.
And that's a false sense of authority. It may give you initial, but when you really get the true respect, it's like, you know, like I said, it's because of the value you're doing it, because of either I've saved risk, I've improved this success for the business, I've done this, and people know that, and word gets around, and so on and so forth, and that becomes key. It's not because I got the project management title or whatever title behind it. I don't even talk about my certifications, because it really does. At the end of the day, you know, it's nice for telling people, I guess, these are things you want to earn for your craft. But at the end of the day, talking with my line of business customer, they could care less.
They could care less, exactly.
They come because, in fact, I think my big operations leader thinks of me as an operational person that has a number of different understandings about different disciplines. Doesn't even think about it really technically as much as a PMM. So, again, in the story, you can't carry your certificates up front and bring them in like this. It may get you in the door for an interview, but it does, and it does say something. Just like a college degree.
Yeah.
You know, college degree says, hey, I earned it, I've worked at it, I have some discipline. But then once you get in the door, if you can't produce, that college degree is not going to save you.
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. Good point, David. I guess what we can take away from this is your PMP may get you in the door, but it certainly ain't going to keep you there. You got to deliver. You got to bring the value. And that takes us to our next point, where we're going to be talking about accountability. What is accountability? We'll find out when we come back.